Welcome back. So second half of the week, things are pretty busy and getting underway here on milling the second to last of the plugs. There'll probably be one more to come later on, which will be the new rear seat mounts, and that's probably it. But we still have to do some ribs. But anyway, these are the last two actual platforms that are going to be for quite some time now, so we'll be able to get on to doing other things. And that one you're just looking at was the one for the nose geared compartment doors for the landing gear, and this one is for the little hatch cover that covers the parachute, so it can sort of be ejected out the back of the aircraft if need be. And so the guys didn't waste any time getting them off the machine, so getting them glassed here, and so we can get some putty on board. So flying through these two now. And as promised, I got the engine running again on Wednesday evening and managed to run it for about a good 30 minutes on that mix of jet fuel and diesel, and didn't have any problems. I did run up to full power. I did notice it didn't have quite the same amount of power, just a little bit less than when just running straight diesel, which is expected. But other than that, it started fine, ran fine, without any adjustments to the tuning or anything like that. So here it is. This is a little bit sort of midway through the run here. I think I had it at about 3100 RPM right here. And sorry for the shaky footage there. I just pulled my cell phone out just to capture this midway through. Anyway, so I ran it for about half an hour at about 2750 RPM after I'd run up to full power. And as I said, didn't have any problems, so I'll be running it some more over the weekend, and just to try and get some more time on it, and slowly weaning it onto 100% jet fuel just to see how things are going. As you can see there, the EGT sensor is sort of jumping around. I've got to do some troubleshooting on that to see why the voltage is spiking on that, but we'll hopefully get that sorted out. And also this week I picked up some of this Marvel mystery oil. I'm going to run that in the fuel mixture for a little while, and then later on we'll switch over and try this power service diesel clean, because someone recommended that as well, and we'll see if I can notice any difference between those. But either of those will keep all the seals and stuff in the high pressure fuel pump all nicely lubricated. And what you're looking at here is a new hardpoint. Jeff's got two of these that he's made because what ended up happening with the gas springs for the doors, they just weren't up to the task, and that the bracket that I made just wasn't able to handle the loads, so we're going to have to step it up a little bit, as you'll see here shortly. And here you can see the guys got both of those platforms in the glass, and so they're ready for the putty now. And meanwhile, some of the other molds the guys have been working on have now been released from their plugs, and this is one of the ones for the main one of the main landing gear legs, doors actually I should say. And over here is the one for the cowling vent. And there's the nose gear door plug all in putty, just waiting for it to set up before we fire up the machine. And meanwhile, the guys are just finishing off the last of the bracing for the molds they've been working on, and this is one of the ones for one of the parachute strap covers, and just getting that one completed. And I was up at Brit's again on Wednesday, I believe, and he's working on some of the little welding jobs there for the inner workings of the door locks. So a little bit finicky welding, but he's getting through it all. And he also made some progress on our other stuff. So here you can see the quadrants for the rudder controls. So those ones are all welded up now and look super nice. Boy, he just does such a nice job, you know. We're so lucky to have him available to do work for us, because I don't know how we would get on if we didn't have a good welder. I mean, he's not even good. He's just, you know, just does such a great job. I'm so happy to have him on board. And there's the last plug just getting underway, at least the last plug for quite some time. This is the one again for the parachute door opening cover plate kind of thing. Anyway, just getting that one done. And here's the other one for the nose gear doors off the machine, just leaning up against the table right now. So that one's ready to have the guys not even really quick sand, it's almost ready just for primer, and then the first round of sanding after that. And while I was at Brit's, I picked up this bit of I-beam that he had there that he said we could take a nice little chunk off in there. I basically took a piece of it and then cut it in two and tapped some holes in there as a starting point for these new brackets to hold these larger gas struts. And these are actually 350-pound gas struts. We actually, a little while ago, we put our load cell up with the door and put it in between where the gas strut was going to be and put all the weight on it we thought was going to be on the door. And we measured about 260 pounds of load for where this gas spring's going to be. So we got this 350-pound one. We may have to go down to a 300, but anyway, we'll give this one a try and see how it works out. So Jeff bonded those hard points into place there, as you can see, and then they need to be drilled and tapped to mount those brackets I was just showing you. So there's one on the other side there, and ultimately they'll have a layup put over the top of them. So this is much stronger than the two little studs that I had in there before. And actually, just a big miscalculation on my part. I made the mistake of using an online calculator, at least two of them actually, and they gave me completely wrong numbers for what the loads were going to be on the gas springs. So anyway, it's much better that we're actually measuring ourselves. So here's a new bracket for the door itself, and this is just mocked up. It's going to be trimmed and cleaned up and stuff. There's the old one. That's the old little gas strut that we had there, 120-pounder. Anyway, so meanwhile, guys, I got this one. This is the 4-plane mold there, 4-plane spar mold, and they just got the bracing. So there's 2 inches of foam on top of that, and laid over with a couple of layups of carbon fiber to finish that one up. And not messing around. Here's that parachute door plug already in primer, and so that was basically the day it came off the machine. It already had the primer on there, and I think that was Thursday. And there's the other one as well, so that's already got the first round of primer on there and ready for some sanding. So back onto these brackets for the door gas spring struts. First thing I had to do on here for the mounting points was just to create a flat platform, because they're a bit sloped there on the face where the bolts are going to go through, and then we're going to put 4 little AN3 bolts through there. So I just used a flat end mill there just to sort of make a flat surface to not only drill into, but as I said, for where the bolt head's going to be. And then I switched there onto 13/64 hole there for where the bolts are going to go through, and just drilled that through. And at the same time I actually made these little jigs that you'll see in a minute, so I can use the jigs to drill and tap the holes on those hard points in the fuselage, and that made it easy. I didn't have to kind of risk messing these ones up by using them as a jig. So anyway, these brackets are going to get a lot more cleanup work. They're just very rough right now. They're going to be all shaped and stuff, so they look more artistic, but right now they're just square. So basically the strut sort of goes into that thread there, and then it'll be mounted with the 4 holes there, and then I'll be trimming it off on that angle as I showed there, and then just trimming off the front bit here, so it'll be sort of trimmed nicely on an angle there, so it looks kind of more like the old one did. And of course I'll round the corners and everything and make them look good. And so here's one of those little jigs that I created, and just basically had the same hole pattern I drilled on the machine, and using it as a drill guide. And so just a bit of 5-minute glue there to hold it into place right where I wanted it to be on the hard point, and the same on the other side. And once it's set up, got my drill out and just went straight through those holes, straight into the hard point. And then so then all the holes were drilled exactly where they needed to be, and on the right angles and everything like that. It was just a neat way of just very quickly getting the holes drilled and aligned. And then I just widened the holes out a little bit, and then went straight to the tap, and tapped all the holes. And it didn't take me more than about 20 minutes, half an hour, and I had all 8 of them done. So job done on that, and ready for a layup over the top of it. And this is what those fixtures looked like when I was finished. So they had a larger hole on the side that was facing down, and then actually a tapped hole on the other side, because I tapped them all the way through that. So just one use, but they worked out good. And meanwhile, the guys were out the front yesterday working on trimming some molds. It was a beautiful day, so they were lucky to be out in the sun while I did this. And here's Devon. He's just been trimming off this one mold there for that parachute strap cover, and got the big the hazmat suit on there to avoid all the dust. And I wanted to show you real quick, Jeff picked this up a little while ago. I don't know if you guys are familiar, but it's a drill bit sharpener. I just wanted to show you really quickly. I used it a couple of times already, and it does a great job. and makes the bits super sharp. So pretty happy about this. So this is what is one old bit that we, obviously I've cooked it at some point and it gets pretty hot sometimes if you're messing up, and that's what it looks like, prior to actually putting it in the sharpener. So just to give you some idea of the before. And the sharpener, basically just mount the bit there in this little holder like that, and then you put it in the front section, as you'll see here in a second, and then you rotate it until it sort of locks into place. And so you clip that in there, and then the bit itself gets rotated until it gets a certain orientation, and then you can see you turn it around and it sort of clicks into place there. And then you just tighten down this sort of nut thing on there, and that locks the bit into place. It locks it at the right depth, and it also locks it at the right orientation. And there's a cam on this thing that I'm pulling out here, and then you put it in the side thing here, and you'll see in a second how you actually go and basically fire it up. But there also, you can choose the two different angles there, 118 and 135 degrees for what the head's going to look like. So just pulling out again, I've got this little V thing on here, and you can just say, yeah, that's a cut already at 135, and that's what this one was. And a more steeper cut would be 118. But anyway, so switch it, and 135 is better for drilling through harder materials. So anyway, just stick with that, and so you put it in here, and you fire up the little motor in the side there. So there's a switch on the bottom. And you just fire that up, and then you just slowly turn it around a couple of different times until you don't hear it winding, cutting anymore. And you see this little sort of cam set up here that sort of winds it in and brings it back out as it goes from one side to the other. And ultimately, when you're done, you probably do that, maybe, I don't know, 15 or 16 times, depending on, the size of the drill bit. And when you pull it out, it looks like that. So it's brand new, and they cut really well. So super happy about having that. We've had it for a little while, but I just didn't have time to actually use it. And then the other day I really needed a sharp bit, so I fired it up, and I was pretty happy to see how well it works out. So it's good having good tools. And here's some of those molds after the guys have cleaned them off, trimmed the edges and sanded them, and also getting them all waxed and prepared for actually laying up the parts on those. And that's probably what's going to be coming soon with all these molds now finished. It's going to be a bit of a frenzy with creating all the various different parts that still need to be created, mainly for the wings actually, but there's still a few other things, as you can see. And there's another one there, parachute strap cover there. That was one of the ones that Devin was working on before, so that one's all trimmed and already underway with some waxing. And there's another one that still needs to be trimmed. That's the other parachute strap cover. And not wasting any time, this is that one for the nose gear doors, the plug, and it's already had its second round of primer, and Zach's already sanded it and he's already starting to wax it, or getting ready to wax it, and this one's already under wax. So those ones are ready to have the molds pulled next week. And meanwhile, here's something that you saw last time around. This is the brackets for the rotor controls with pass through the keel, and as you can see, more of Brit's nice handiwork there. Welded those bits up there that needed to be welded up. So it's just a matter of match drilling this piece to the one that's there sitting on the floor, and then off to powder coat. And there's those ones there that somebody commented that was going to look a little bit weak. They have the sleeve welded in place now, and that sleeve is going to have the bearings pushed in. As you can see, I've got one of them just sort of pushed in just a little bit. I didn't want to push it all the way in because it's going to go to powder coat, and when it comes back, then I'll put the bearing in place. So that's basically how that's going to work, but inside there. So yeah, those come out good. I'm pretty happy about that, and they'll be off to powder coat on Monday morning. And there's those little oil bearings for those. And one thing I hadn't been successful with in the past was trying to get our governor controller working. And as you can see now, I do have it working. So, and it's actually actuating the governor right now. So you can basically adjust the pitch there, and up or down or whatever, RPM up, down, and then you just press that button there and it brings it back to flat pitch. So you got manual control either way, or just one button for bringing it back. And there's the governor there, and when you're running those controls, you can hear the little motor in there adjusting the cams in there, which adjusts the oil feed that's going to be going off to the prop. So happy to get that done, and that was all a matter of the wiring there, and I messed up the wiring on that connector, and that's why it wasn't working. But anyway, that's a problem solved now. And here I've got that rudder pass-through bracket in the vise now, ready to sort of match drill that hole through. So I decided just to drill it straight through on its own, and then I put the actual that tube through and had it sort of locked into place there and match drilled that. So it just needs a bolt through it, and that's what it looks like. So that way we slide it in from the top of the fuselage. As you can see here, that just gets slid in through that bracket there with the bearings in it, and then the bottom bit put on and a bolt put in to lock it into place. And now we have a way of controlling the rudder through the pressure wall. So as you can see there, left and right there, moves it back and forth there. And our cables will be coming, looks like next week actually we'll be having the cables that will run out to the strake tips, so you'll see those getting mocked into place. And something I haven't really mentioned much of yet is the feed for the pressurized air going into the cabin. So I just quickly drew this up on the whiteboard to show you kind of what's going on. So if we start on the left hand side, the air coming out of turbo number 2, which is the most high pressure air and the hottest as well, as you can see there, the pink color I've got there, that actually runs into the intercooler, and it gets cooled down quite a lot going through the intercooler, and it'll actually be quite a lot up at altitude as well, just because of the colder ambient air. And so the colder air coming out there that I have sort of that teal kind of color, that's what ultimately goes into the engine. And so on either, this is the way we're going to do it, at least to try, just to see how it works out for us. We're going to have a feed, an airline feed coming off before the intercooler and also after the intercooler, and each one of those will be controlled with a solenoid, so we can turn them on or off. And then they'll basically tee into a single line that'll go through a pressure regulator, because we only ever want to put the most of maybe 5 psi or 5.5 psi into the cabin. And even though we've got pressure relief valves there, or the pressurization system will actually make sure that it never gets over that pressure. It's pointless putting more than that in, because you're just going to blow it all out and you're just wasting power on the engine. So the regulator will be set to about 5.5 psi, and then there's a check valve in there to make sure that it doesn't leak backwards out, so it makes it only go one way. And then ultimately that goes into the cabin, and then there'll be a pressure sensor on the cabin as well, so we can see exactly how much cabin pressure there is, and then that will that information will come up on the Motec display, similar to the other pressure sensors that we have up on the display. So when I was running the engine the other day, I was looking at in the cruise power setting area around 2750 RPM, I was looking at the difference in ambient air to the temperature that's coming out of the turbo number 2, and then also the temperature coming out of the intercooler. And the ambient to intercooler is about 60 degree difference, in terms of 60 degrees more Fahrenheit. And depending on the power level that's been set, the temperature coming out of the turbo number 2 is probably at least 50 degrees Fahrenheit more than that, probably even more. But around about cruise it'll be maybe 60 degrees or 70 degrees more. So let's just pick, say, a day around where we are here. This time of the year at 25,000 feet, the temperature average will be about sort of mid negative 25 degrees Celsius, which is about mid negative 15 degrees Fahrenheit. So if we add 60 degrees to that, we'd be 45 degrees Fahrenheit air pumping into the cabin, which is not really ideal, a little bit cold. But then if we add another 50 degrees to that, you know, we have air that's more like 90 degrees coming in. So somewhere in the middle there is a good mix for the temperature that you want coming in the cabin. And again, it really depends on what the power setting is, what the ambient air temperature is, you know, what the altitude is, to determine, you know, exactly what the best mixture is going to be. But ultimately, I think eventually it's one of those sort of things we can dial in and have it probably fully automated. And so we're just bringing in just the right temperature coming off the right part of the engine, or at least, you know, the airflow coming off the turbos or the intercooler. And ultimately, I think we can probably get it dialed in. So with a couple of temperature sensors, we can have the Motec ECU decide exactly which solenoid it needs to be on at any one time. and bring in just a nice 70-degree temperature air, and so the air conditioning or heating system doesn't have to do very much at all. It'll just be there just to sort of modulate it a little bit. So that's all good and getting all sorted out. Not wasting any time. Here's Jeff actually just cutting out a little place on the back wall there that's going to be the hard point where the air feeds in, and also where the pressure sensor is mounted. And he finished off the day today with putting in those layups over those door hard points for the cylinders. And here you can see he's also closed out that sort of join there where the windshield is. And lastly, he put the layup over there where that new hard point is for the pressure sensor, as you can see. So things are moving along pretty rapidly in the shop. All kinds of things happening now, and it's going to continue like this with just, you know, left and right doing all the various things to get the fuselage up and sorted. And we'll have the guys coming back, 2 guys coming back, Keith and another new guy coming back over the summer in May. So things are getting exciting. Anyway, that's our update for this week, and thanks again for watching.